from the high level, like I'm a passive income guy. Like that is my thing. I see a lot of people who do direct to seller marketing, and they want to do all the flips and all the transactional pieces and parts of it. And that I have nothing against that. I think that's a great way to make a living and all of that. But my goal is to choose whether or not to work every single day. And as you guys know, this business is a crap load of work. It's one of the hardest of all the types of investing that we've done.
Drew Wiard, who is probably one of my favorite people that I've ever connected with in the real estate space, because he is like the definition of the million next door, not just sort of in how he lives his life, but also too, you meet him and you're like, I mean, this guy's awesome, super relatable. And you are doing so many unbelievable things, especially for someone who has like just quit your W-2 not that long ago. So Drew, for those who are unfortunate enough to not have heard about you before, how you doing, man? Thanks for coming on the show. And what all do you have going on? Give us like the quick breakdown just to blow people away.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the chance to come hang out with you guys. I mean, we've hung out in person and that's always a good time, but we live on opposite ends of the country. So it's nice to connect. Okay. So me in a nutshell, I'm 41 and I used to practice medicine. I was a pharmacist and then moved into hospital leadership. And I did that for 15 years. And just this past year retired from my W-2. So that's all kind of very new and still figuring all that out. From the investment side, I've been investing about 7 years. Today, as it stands today, I have about somewhere between 40 and 50 residential rentals here locally where I live in Fort Wayne, Indiana. A partner and I have a couple of commercial buildings. We've got 3 of them. They're worth about $1 million to $1.5 million each. And we're looking to do more and more of that. I'm involved in apartment syndications with Whitehaven Capital in Phoenix specifically. We've done a number of very large apartment syndications on that front. What else? I run a company called Clear Sky Properties, which is similar to what you guys do. So direct to seller marketing to acquire more properties locally. And then the last thing is in the last 90 days or so, my partner and I have acquired a business in Detroit, and it's kind of some small or light manufacturing business, but that's what the world looks like.
Perfect. And I guess I want to add on top of all the stuff you've done in just 7 years, you just left your W-2, it's like 6 months ago, maybe. Not even, but you also are an active paramotor pilot. Every single time I see you on Instagram, social media, you're out flying around doing stuff. You got 4 kids. Is that right? You got 4 kids.
Yep.
You're an outstanding father. Wow. You're always going to their sports games and, doing all this sort of stuff. Like you are the epitome of living a full life, I feel like, for, like a holistic view, and you're crushing it in so many different ways. So,
well, that's high praise, man. I that's probably more than I deserve, but we try.
I think that, there's just so much to be said about being able to accomplish so many things in a relatively short period of time. I mean, 7 years, there's tons of people that have been investing for 20 years and haven't accomplished nearly as much as you have.
Yep.
So
not even close.
So yeah.
So is that when, Drew, 7 years ago? I didn't know that it was 7 years ago you started that. So that's information to me. Is that when you just started buying single family homes? Was 7 years ago?
Yeah, basically I bought my first home for my wife and I to live in. It wasn't supposed to be an investment. We did that 15 years ago. We moved out maybe 13 years ago, and I had that one rental forever, but I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't buy it as an investment. So technically I've had that one for a very long time, but I was heads down, family man, career guy, all that kind of stuff in the medicine world. And it was really about 7 years ago that we tore into it with intentionality.
Yeah. Awesome. And I something else too, I'll add is with the properties that you own. I know you've also sold a lot of different properties. You've retraded a lot of different properties, so you've done an incredible number of transactions over that period of time too. So it's not like, you own 40 properties because you bought 40 properties and you maintain them forever, but you're constantly trading, scaling up, buying nicer stuff. You sell a lot of things. I know on land contract over there too, which is a pretty interesting play. But maybe we can dive into that a little bit. But we're talking before the show about something that I think is super relevant to a lot of our listeners. especially as they start to like sort of find their feet and they start to grow a little bit. And that was about goals. And, you know, I cut you guys off when you're talking about it because I felt like it was such good content. But, you know, you have so many things going on. You left your W-2. You're trying to, you know, buy this business. You want to scale. You're doing all these syndications. You have all these rental properties. You're running Clear Sky Properties and doing wholesales and flips and stuff like Dan and I do. What are your goals with all this, man? Because I know it's not just to be rich, because that's not you. You're not trying to like have the Lambo
No.
and like the big beach house. So what are your goals with all this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, and I think, you know, Dan had kind of phrased that exact same question as, you know, why do you do it? Like, what are you after? And so it's evolved. It's evolved quite a bit over the years. Because again, I used to be, you know, medicine man, career guy, and so I started to want to do it just as a security blanket. I'm the sole breadwinner in my house, and in case that job goes away, I'd like to have something with which to put bread on the table. And so that's kind of how it started, but then it evolved. And as I learned more and it picked up some momentum, then it became, okay, well, maybe I'd be able to retire at 55 instead of 65, something like that. And as time goes on and it grows and we find some more success, then it turns into, well, maybe if I wanted to do this full time instead of practice medicine, then I could do that. And that's kind of where we arrived. That kind of became the big goal in 21, and then came to fruition in 22. But it continues to be an evolution, because now that I have achieved that kind of monumental goal and some of my net worth goals and some of these other things, like, well, what do I want now? Right. And so we can dive into what it looks like now, but I think just kind of that evolution, if you do this long enough, you'll figure out that your perspective as you get older, your kids get older, life changes, like you'll just want different things. And so, today it's really focused on lifestyle, and what I want to do specifically with my time. Time is the new currency for me.
Right. I love that. That's so important too. And like, I think about it when you're saying that, for a lot of folks that Mike and I tend to bring into our circle as far as through our coaching program or into our podcast as listeners, it's like they're starting out with that goal. What you said is like, well, I just want a couple rental properties, a little extra cash flow, but then that your goals can and should evolve, and it can and should evolve to, I don't even need to work anymore. Now I'm truly, my goals are for myself. And I think that time piece, what you just said, time is the currency, is so valuable. And unfortunately, not a lot of people can get to that point in life financially to where they recognize
and it's one of those things you don't really understand until you get there, you know. And I think that one of the sort of faux pas, I guess, with real estate is a lot of people think that you'll buy all these properties, you'll have mailbox money, and then you can just go and retire and be on a beach. But that's not very fulfilling. You know, even when you sort of reach a level of financial freedom, financial independence, you need something to do with yourself. And what exactly that looks like is different for everybody.
Finding that thing that's super fulfilling, I think is really important. Dan had asked earlier, just in the pre-show, like, okay, now that you're retired, are you working more? Are you working less? And like, I'm working like a maniac. That's one of the things, like, I've got to figure out is, what does balance look like now that I'm making all my own choices? People give you this terrible advice that says, you know, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I think it's trash, because the reality is if you do what you love, you'll never want to stop. You know, and for me, working is very gratifying. And that's not saying I'm a workaholic. I can put it on hold and we go on vacation, and, you know, it's not like I get the shakes or I need a bump or anything, but like, it is tough for me sometimes to be like, hey, it's 5 p.m., it's 6 p.m. Like, it's time to shut the office down and head home so that you can be fully present.
I think that's like that ultimate integration too, that you hear from people. Cause I bet you don't have a problem stopping your day at 2:00 to go paramotor and then come back at 5 to do some more work. Like, I guarantee you're okay with that, or doing whatever you want during your day, and the work and the fun, it's all kind of integrated.
Yeah. It very much is. It just depends on what you're going to prioritize. Right. So like, now that I am working for myself, I'm back in the gym pretty regularly. And it's, for some things it's difficult to stop the office work, but for the gym, like, it's a piece of cake, because like, that's a staple of what my everyday needs to look like. And when it is time to go fly, like, we just do that, because that's good for my head. It's good for my heart. It's good for balance and all those sort of things. So yeah, you're right. I think integration of just kind of lifestyle and the things you want to do That's kind of where I'm at right now.
And like you said, we never want to stop.
great.
Like it's not even work anymore. Like honestly, one of the things that I guess I struggle with as an entrepreneur is when it comes to, I would say, like the forced rest time, like things like right now, we're filming this, it's just before Christmas in 2022. I don't really care about Christmas because like I kind of just want I want to get past it so we can get to the phase where everyone else that is into that can get back to like getting stuff done again, especially in the real estate business. There's so many different people that are involved in it and everyone else shuts down. I'm like, yeah, but like what if we didn't? What if we like just kept going and we could do more stuff? Because that's what excites me. Like what doesn't excite me is getting gifts. What excites me is, doing business and getting deals. And then, even like when I'm traveling and stuff, my wife are big travelers, like, we were like went whitewater rafting on the Zambezi River this past September. And it was like a super amazing experience. But man, to tell you what, like I got a little bit of a buzz just when I got back to the hotel in Zimbabwe. And like, I'm like, ooh, I got some like business emails I got to check. Like that was equally as exciting to me as getting on the river, That
was it. Yeah. So, that was it.
But, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And
hey, Mike, can we pause for a second? I don't know if you're getting it, Drew, but when Mike was talking, it was just like weird audio.
It's silky smooth for me from Mike. Now your image is a little blurred and gets pixelated from time to time, but I can hear you both.
Must be on my end. Okay. It's probably on my end. I'll sorry to interrupt.
You're good. We can edit that.
No, you're good.
I'll just switch. I'm just going to switch over to some other headphones too, just to.
It's funny. It's definitely correlated with the weather too, Dan. I've decided. I feel like when we do interviews and it's kind of like snowy outside, the connection's always shittier.
You can blame just about everything bad in the world.
Honestly, though, not a lot of good stuff happens in the snow unless, it's a 6 ski day. But even then. Well,
at least like with you guys, like you're a couple hours away from being able to go snowboard or ski or something, right? What am I going to do? Like hike through a cornfield here? Like there is no use.
The world's most boring snowshoe trek just across an empty field.
All
right, we good?
All right, we can start up again.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So where were we?
Well, you had mentioned like coming into the holiday season and such.
Yeah.
For me, like Christmas season, like it's pedal through the floor. Like I learned early on, like kind of working in corporate, that like everyone checks out at Thanksgiving, or maybe, they check out for a week and maybe come back and do like a week's worth of work. But like until the first quarter of the next year starts, everyone's completely out to lunch. And so some of the best deals that I have ever found all come while everybody else is sleeping.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of people, landlords, big time investors who are looking to retire, or they need to pivot or figure something out tax wise at the end of a calendar year. And they want to move some deals before, the calendar resets. If you're in, especially the direct to seller marketing, I think everyone kind of dials their mail back a little bit because, they assume people are on holiday or they don't want to move. This December is on fire for us compared to the last 3 or 4 months. And so I don't know, December is absolutely go time because most everyone else that's hustling stops hustling.
Yeah, that is interesting. I wonder too with that. Like, so you say it's a lot of landlords, those sort of things. I think one of the challenges that we face, which is a local thing, is we don't really have many institutional people here. So like we always find that during this period of time, the leads that come through, they generally want to wait until the new year. It's cold, it's snowy. They don't want to kick the tenants out. They don't want to move, whatever. But we have like a major lag. So like right now it'll be slow, but it'll come around in like January, February, and then it'll be hot. But like December is always kind of a funny time.
But you gotta market now. You gotta make sure you're marketing now so that you do get those opportunities in January. Because I mean, Mike and I tell that to all the folks we work with. It's like keep it going because they'll come around and everybody else, like you said, Drew. We know a lot of folks over the years, our competitors, like, no, we just kind of shut down for December. Everybody's in the holidays. It's like I feel like that's like a cop out to not want to work for a month. Well, honestly.
Okay, so even if you're, because every market's different, right? Even if your market slows down, take that month and that extra time to work on your SOPs or refresh your website or like dial in your systems or write a job description for the executive assistant that you should have hired 6 months ago. Like, just go full
Right.
tilt on it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I love working in November and
Yeah,
December.
I like it internally for sure. I find that I get a lot of stuff done that way. As we've been optimizing a lot of our processes. When I did an Instagram post the other day, and that's literally what I said. And like the things to do during the slow season, and one of them was working on your internal processes, because I know that's what Dan and I have been heavily focusing on. Because it's easy to forget about that, especially over the summer when you're doing so many transactions and all these sort of things. You just like don't have time to trying to keep the building from burning down the entire time. But no, that's awesome. So,
Yes.
I just love your viewpoint on stuff. So let's dive into your investing a little bit, particularly with, I guess, the residential side. I think that's what relates mostly to most of our listeners, and particularly how you started that and like how you sort of scaled so quickly on that side. Because, you're in, I would say like a cheaper market, but you're also in a market where, I don't know, it's highly competitive throughout there. Like there's a lot of people that, like hedge funds, things like that buy all throughout that area, but yet you've been able to find a pretty sweet niche for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, from the high level, like I'm a passive income guy. Like that is my thing. I see a lot of people who do direct to seller marketing, and they want to do all the flips and all the transactional pieces and parts of it. And that I have nothing against that. I think that's a great way to make a living and all of that. But my goal is to choose whether or not to work every single day. And as you guys know, this business is a crap load of work. It's one of the hardest of all the types of investing that we've done. So for me, even from the beginning, it's rental property, land contracts, or in some states, they're called contract for deed. Basically just holding a note against the property where I have no accountability for it. Multiple streams of income is basically it, where the need for me to be present is absolutely minimal. And that kind of feeds into the commercial deals that we do as well. If I built my rental portfolio over about 7 years and it's this big, we built that commercial portfolio and it's almost just as big and throws off more income and is less headache than the entire residential side. So, So for me, it's all about passive income. The only reason I do direct to seller marketing is so that of the 4 houses we get this month, I'm going to cherry pick the one to add to my rental portfolio. And that's really it. The rest of them I sell. I rarely put them on the MLS. I just put them straight out to my local RIA group that I started and host the local RIA here. And so I help give my friends as many deals as they can get. And I have sold a lot of really good deals to them. It just doesn't meet my criteria to hold for the next 20 years.
So I got a question for you on the land contract. So do you exclusively, so you own 40 to 50 right now. Are they all exclusively being held on land contract with somebody, or do you actually keep them as rental properties?
Yeah, really good question. I would say probably of let's say we've got 45 rentals. I would say I've only got 7 or 8 that are for sale on land contract. And that's a deep conversation to decide, which route you want to go and in which type of markets that's the best way to go. I've been investing long enough now that we've kind of been at the top of the market, and we haven't been at the bottom of the market, but it's just different right now. And there's probably some good opportunities to do that exact sort of transaction. So pros and cons on both sides, but it's a small slur.
Let's touch on really quick what exactly a land contract is, because I know there are people that have never heard of that before, especially because it's not common, at least over here on the west side of the United States.
For sure.
Right. So across the U.S., your state is going to be one of 2 types, and they will either do land contracts or they will do contract for deed. And the simple way to think about it is, let's say that Drew owns a house and Mike wants to either rent or he wants to buy. For whatever reason, he can't go buy a house. Maybe he had a divorce or his credit's bad or medical bills or whatever. Or maybe he started a business and he's not financeable for the next 2 or 3 years. Right. There's a lot of reasons why people can't go get traditional funding. And those are the cases that I'm looking to help. Right. So what I'll do is, let's say that I've got a house that I'm willing to sell and it's $200,000. I'm going to make sure it may not be flawless, but it is clean and safe, mechanically sound, like it's a good house. Right. There's no hidden issues with it. And so I will choose to sell it to Mike. But rather than sell it traditionally where he's going to go get a loan and we'll go to the title company or the lawyer to close it, I'm basically going to be the bank. That's the simplest way to think about it, is I am the bank. And so in a land contract, what happens is you decide on what the terms should be. So for my land contracts, I require 10% down. So you'd have to come with $20,000. And then I will give you a mortgage or a note against the property. And it's usually 30 years. Everyone wants a 30-year note. And we will agree on an interest rate. And it's usually what the current rate is plus about 3 percentage points. And it'll be amortized over 30 years. But it may or may not balloon, meaning the rest of the amounts due in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, something like that. And at that point, then the contract buyer, or Mike in this example, would go get standard financing. The beauty of that is I still have title to the property. So if you stop paying, it's easier for me to get it back. The other beauty is I'm not a landlord in that example. I'm the bank. Right. So when your kid stuffs a diaper down the toilet and everything's backed up and you've got a problem, you would never call the bank to help fix that problem. So when my land contract people call me, I give them the name of a plumber. So the maintenance is on you. This is your house and you're the owner of record in the county.
Yeah. So, and you need no property management. And then also one question, do you still get to use depreciation because you're still holding title?
You do. You do, and there's kind of an art to it. It's kind of complex. I know my CPA has had to do a lot of research to figure out the best way to do that. You do get to depreciate it, but I'd lean on someone else to answer that part of it.
But
right, yeah. I mean, it is
cool.
a
I'm glad you added that part on to Dan, and because I was going to bring that up as well. Is how is this different from seller financing? But it's because you get to maintain title to the properties. You don't have to go through a foreclosure where you have to receive the deed back if they default on it. Yeah. But I guess also too, one clarification: can you do this if you have a mortgage on the property?
Yeah, 100%. A lot of people think that you can't, but every single land contract property that I have, usually I'll buy it with cash, either my own cash or somebody else's cash, private money lender, something like that. I will then find Mike who wants to buy it on land contract, and we'll set up our negotiations, and I will let Mike know, okay, once you and I are locked in, then I'm going to have the bank come and give me a loan behind this, and you'll have to sign a subordination agreement that that Drew has a loan against the property. But when you go to pay it off, all the stipulations of that loan, like your payment goes to pay that loan off, and I get whatever's left.
That's awesome. Yeah. And then, go ahead.
The downside to it, and I've learned this, you'll only learn this over time, is in the Midwest, they don't appreciate. Like I owned a single house for 10 years and it went up like 10 grand. It's asinine. Like don't invest in the Midwest. You invest for cash flow, not for appreciation. Yeah. However, now all of a sudden, like the last 2 years, the whole world appreciated because of inflation, right? And my local market, Fort Wayne, has really exploded quite a bit. So I have two houses that are I bought them at the exact same time, the exact same numbers. I think I paid like 80 grand, which sounds like nothing to you guys, but these are actually pretty nice houses. They have each appreciated up to $200,000. One of them's a rental.
Wow.
One of them's a rental, which is great because I get to enjoy the value of that going up, right? If I were to sell it today, I'd get all that equity. The rents go up with time. On the land contract that I locked in 4 years ago, it's only good for the $130,000 that I sold it to them for. And that was where the market was. I don't inflate my land contracts. That's what it was worth.
Yeah.
But now the land contract buyer has the benefit from 130 to 200,000, that $70,000, where if they complete their land contract, then they get all that equity. And that kind of sucks for me. Now I got exactly what I asked for, and I didn't pay realtors, and I didn't have, like just the whole mess of selling a traditional house, but I missed out on the equity build. Now, if they fail on their land contract, I get that house back and we can rinse and repeat. But that is, now that I've done it for a while, if you're in a inflationary time, that's probably not the best time to do a land contract.
Yeah. And I think it's funny. I remember hanging out with you. I guess one of the times we went down to Florida for one of our other meetups, and I remember you literally said, "Is like, you know how I know we're in a bubble because houses where I'm at are now going up in value." It's like that has never happened before. Yeah.
That's
So,
funny.
no, that's cool though. But then, so I just want
Great.
to shift gears a little bit. So you said that, you built your portfolio residentials this way over the last number of years, which is awesome. But now you've started doing commercial, and you started doing the commercial pretty recently, over the past, like, what, 1 or 2 years maybe. And that is now producing as much cash flow, is equal value pretty much, and is way less of a headache even than that. So, how did you, I guess, how did you get into the commercial stuff? And are we talking triple net or like multifamily?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great qualifier. So not multifamily. We do that with in the syndication space, but I feel that that's just a completely different thing. For me, when I talk about commercial, our goal is triple net. Sometimes we get double net. We do have some tenants that have a modified gross lease. If you get into the commercial world, those are usually the three types you have: a modified gross, a double net, or a triple net lease. And we have 3 properties. One of them is a warehouse that's pure triple net. I hear nothing from these people. They've been there 15 years. They've got like 9 more years on the lease. It's a slam dunk. Yeah. We're accountable for nothing other than the roof. One of them is kind of like a medical office park that was only maybe 40% rented when we bought it. And if things go well, we'll be 100% rented up here in the spring at the latest. And then one of them is a mixed use building in downtown South Bend where it's retail on the bottom, then it's offices on the second level. And then the third level is actually a shell that we haven't done anything with, that it's probably time to figure out, like, are these going to be luxury downtown flats? I don't know. That's residential and it's out of town and that's a lot of work, but maybe it's shared office space. I don't know. We have some choices there.
So I've got a couple questions for you. I want to start as like, so you know how to find residential properties. Yeah. You're good at it. You got a whole business around that. How did you start finding commercial? Like, what was that step to go from, hey, I'm residential, to I'm going to start buying commercial? Because that's a big leap for a lot of investors that are just on the residential side.
Yeah. Well, so the impetus to make the change is it occurred to me, like, I've missed my opportunity to scale. No, I didn't have someone around like who was ahead of me who could tell me the value of scaling and how important it is. Like, it's good to have rental property and it's nice to start paying them off and building equity. But if you have a $2 million portfolio and you only owe $1 million on that, so it's paid off halfway, right? Is that the highest and best return on your equity? Maybe it is and maybe it isn't. But if you were to sell that whole $2 million portfolio and now you've got $1 million, you could use that $1 million as a 20% down payment on a $5 million building. And by scaling up, that's going to throw off, it should throw off notably more cash flow. And so when that light bulb went off, I said, okay, I've got to start looking at, like, how do I scale up? And the other thing was, like, I already had 40 houses or maybe 35 at the time. Like, if I want to double my income, do I want 35 more houses?
Exactly.
Not really.
Right.
I mean, I'll take them, but there's got to be a better way. So that's what kind of pointed me that direction. I have a partner on my commercial deals. And while I was coming up on the residential side for 5 or 6 years, he was coming up on the industrial side. So he was very familiar with that space. And so we kind of came together. Gotcha. He's brilliant with underwriting, numbers, lease management, things like that. And then I have no fear of confrontation and dealing with tenants and telling people no. And then I go raise private money for quite a bit. So all 3 of those commercial deals, we raised private money for the down payments. So we bought all of them with none of our own money.
Gotcha. That was my second question, because again, you probably know how to fund a residential property, and you can probably fund a lot of those yourself anyways if you're buying them with, below market. So you used private money to fund these acquisitions. Now, is that like an equity share? Is that like a preferred return? Like, how did you structure that? Just maybe quickly.
Yeah, I can give it to you real quick. When you are bringing private money in, if it's for houses and stuff, they usually just want X amount of percent, a couple of points. And when you exit the deal, they get paid. On the commercial side and on big deals, you have a decision as to whether or not you're going to provide debt or equity or both. And the debt means you took some debt from them. You're going to pay them a percentage on it. Equity means maybe they're a 20% owner, and when you exit, they get 20% of the big cash windfall on the backside. So for us, with these commercial deals, I had a lot of people who I was already using private money with already, but I'd have their money for 90 days, 60 days, 120 days. And they wanted something that was long-term, locked in, And so we said, okay, we'll pay you 8% interest only every single month, like mailbox money for the next 5 years. Exactly if you put this amount in, you will get this check back every single month. And so on these 3 commercial deals, there's no equity for those investors, but it's the debt is there, and they know exactly what sort of check they're going to get every month.
That's awesome. How do you structure those relationships with them? Do they are they an owner in the LLC that owns the property? Is it like a personal guarantee? We're trying to, I'm asking this as a selfish question because Dan and I are trying to figure out the legalities of raising money because honestly, we've never really done it. The little bit of money that we've raised has been kind of like handshake deals from friends. And I started to take it seriously. A, I don't want to lose people's money. B, I don't want to go to jail. So I want to make sure that we're doing stuff kind of by the book. So I guess, how have you approached it?
No, it's a great question. We went through the same mental gymnastics like a year ago, and this brings up some trauma from trying to figure out like, how do you do this? Our goal was to make it simple. Okay. So my partner and I have an LLC, and the LLC is going to buy that building. The challenge was like, if we were going to raise $350,000 and we had 7 people that wanted to bring 50 grand. Okay. Are you going to give them like a second lien, third lien, fourth lien, fifth lien, sixth lien? Like, are you going to give them all these different positions behind the bank? Because that's generally what I do with my lenders is I give them a note and mortgage against my property. But if you're the guy or the gal who has like the 7th lien position, it's worthless. Like it's absolutely nothing.
Yeah, doesn't help them
So technically, these individuals, they know the deal that we've used their money for. We're very transparent about that, but they are not technically tethered to that deal. And I wouldn't even call it an investment. It's technically a loan from them as an individual or their entity to us as a business, as an LLC. Now, because they're not tethered to the property and they don't have a lien position, my partner and I do provide a personal guarantee. And I don't mind doing that. It's not something I want to do forever, but it's a means to an end here in the short term.
Okay. So interesting. So it is literally just like a business loan. It's not backed by any specific collateral necessarily. It is a loan to your business.
Besides your personal assets.
That's right. And, and some people kind of balked at that at first. And I said, hey, I get it. But let me tell you why I think this is a good thing. Here's my net worth and my PFS. Here's my partners, right? Together, we're worth X million dollars, right? And what I'm telling you is if I flake on this, you can come take my house. You can take my cars. You can take any of these other assets that you see on my balance sheet. As opposed to just this one building or property. And the other selling point that is honest and I think was really impactful for them is we're new at the commercial space. We have a lot of success, and I have every bit of confidence we're going to be we'll be fine in this. But since you're not tethered to the property, I owe you that money, whether this property does incredibly well or whether we absolutely eat dirt on it. And so it's a way to kind of insulate or protect them from being tethered to the success of this project.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. They have to believe in you more than they do the project.
Yeah. And there are going to be some investors like, the multimillionaires, the professional investors, like they'll take that risk on the building because they want the equity position, right? Well, some people want less risk, and that's kind of what we provided. It's a lower risk, lower return, but it's a good fit for everybody.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I think that's an okay way to go while you're in like that, I don't know, when you have a little bit of relationships with people and you're kind of in like that lower money raising phase. But, it's when people are getting into the position where they're raising, $10 million, $30 million, $50 million funds that you definitely don't want to be writing personal guarantees for $50 million worth of stuff raised, unless you're really balling. But at which point, like, I don't know, that's just a different ballgame.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, I don't want to give personal guarantees where I don't have to, but like on one of those buildings, we raised 350. I'll personally guarantee that. That doesn't mean I'm sitting on piles and piles and piles of cash. But if I had to liquidate some things or sell one of my rentals or, to make a note right, I have the bandwidth and the capacity to do that. By the time you're getting to a $10 million building, you're going to be working with the bank, and you should be to the point where there's, no more personal guarantees there.
Right. Yeah. And you made a good point earlier when you were talking about kind of like scaling and buying this building, and you just said too, like, you could personal guarantee 350 grand. Like, okay, but like, you have a partner that came on with you that probably gives you a lot of confidence that his underwriting and scaling into this commercial properties gives you a lot of confidence overall to give that personal guarantee in this limited capacity.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he brought a lot to the table. I brought a lot to the table, and most of these private money lenders I'm talking to, I already have relationships with, and they've been paid on time every time, just like I promised them. And there are a couple of new ones, but you show them, look, like here, I can't show you the names of my other investors, but here's this check and this check and this check and the dates they went out. Like we automate everything. So there's not even a chance to forget to pay someone. It just happens.
Yeah, that is awesome.
And if you go back and you look at the last 18 months, these are people who had 50, 100, 200 grand just sitting in the bank or in the stock market, right? So if you think about what they've done, they pulled their money out of the stock market, which absolutely tanked, depending on what you're invested in.
Right.
Everything went down. Or they had it just sitting in the bank and inflation just went berserk, right? So 8% every single month that they know that they can count on for the next 5 years during an inflationary time, that's a gift for someone who's just sitting on extra cash.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that I mean, you're doing what I would say, like, KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid. Like, it is just so rudimentary, and I think so many people try to make it more complicated than it is. That's super, super cool. So I guess your commercial stuff that you have now, you have those 3 properties that you raised for. You're trying to figure out kind of, I guess, the end game for those. Are those like long-time holds? Are you looking to sell them to pay off your investors? Do you have any sort of stipulations with that with your investors, or is it like you're hoping to refinance and pay them off at some point?
So in the commercial world, you generally will get a 5-year loan. It might be amortized over 10, 15, 20 years, but in 5 years, you're going to have to re-up with the bank. So we set the investor notes to happen at the exact same time. We may pay them off early, but we'll probably refinance on the things we want to keep. So like the warehouse, you set it and forget it, right? We'll refinance in 5 years. We might refinance them out. We'll see what that looks like. With the other buildings, they're somewhat like a repositioning, right? Like they weren't performing the way that we wanted them to, but that's the opportunity for us, right? Is to buy them and start to reposition them. So if we kept them for the rest of our lives or for a long time, they should cash flow just fantastic as time goes further and further down the road. And they're locked in at the bank like at 3.5% or 4%. So we're just knocking the principal on these things down like crazy. It's tough to say, the one building, like the medical office, if we get that filled, we bought it for 600, you might be able to sell it for 2 million or something like that. And if we can do that,
that'd be great.
Then we might take those profits and we might pay down equipment for the new business or the SBA loan we took to buy the business. And that would be massively impactful. So, we're kind of in a constant state of reevaluating. Where's the market at? Where's our greater risk at? Like, what do we want to, how do we optimize what we have?
Yeah. And at that phase of just trying to figure out what the best ROI is, kind of, you said before, of like the different pots of money, the different properties and
and where your goals have adapted at that point in your life, right? On the back end of these loans, right? Might change your mind.
Well, that's exactly it, right? Like, so if we were to sell that building for $2 million, the highest ROI would be to do a 1031 exchange so that we can defer the taxation and we'd go buy something else. So we'd have, I don't know, $1.5 million or something to go buy a $6 or $7 million building. That's the highest ROI. Yeah. But we bought a business that's manufacturing and it is subject to economy and different things. And so that kind of money would pay off 3/5 of the business. And so 6 months ago, we didn't have the business. So I would have told you, we just 1031 and we just keep rocking and rolling. Well, now my goals have changed, just like you said, so I think risk mitigation is every bit as important as getting the highest ROI. And I'm kind of past the point in my life where the highest ROI means the most. Sometimes I'm willing to take a lower ROI if it means that twice a week I can play some video games or go fly, you know?
Right. You can sleep more. You can go fly. Yeah, I love that.
Come on, Drew. How are you ever going to, have the, I don't know, 10,000 square foot lake house in Ferrari and
the Lambo?
You won't. And that's the thing. Like, you just won't. And I don't know. Like, I feel like, now granted, I'm still growing. I want to grow my passive income, and I'd like to get to the point where I don't have to hustle some. But I feel like I have this one thing that most investors don't, and it's enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
great.
at some point it's enough. Like, I would like to, sure, I'd like to have $250,000 in passive income. That is absolutely a goal. And I'm not there yet, right? Like, I'm still just shy of 6 figures in passive income. And so I'd like to get there, but my kids are healthy. My wife and I have time to do some of the things that we want to do. We'd like to take more vacations, but we still have, teenagers and stuff at home, and we'll get there. So I don't know. Like, I just don't need, like, when's enough? I don't know. When you're living the life that you want to live, that's probably enough. And right now, life's all right.
There you go.
That's so awesome. I don't know that I've heard a more true and a more valuable quote. That in the confidence you say it.
And that was authentic. Like that, like literally gave me chills, just like the way that you say that. We don't.
I know.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah,
podcast over. Yeah. We're done.
Yeah. So that's such good stuff. That's such a valuable lesson too for most people. And even though, like, I don't know, I have, I guess I would say, larger financial goals, but that's also like, that's where I want to be. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the same thing that everyone has to do. And not everything needs to be about keeping up with the Joneses, especially when the Joneses are now the, 22-year-old YouTube people that like don't actually have any true value behind their money, even though they make so much of it. Right. But that's like what the youth and all these other sort of people view as success right now. You don't need to be chasing that. Like it's probably not going to be worth it.
No, I completely agree. Like, so we've got teenagers at home, right? Like, we've got 4 kids, and they range from 13 to 20, almost 22, right? Because I'm an old man and I have 20-year-olds. My kids are probably closer in age to you guys than I am. And we have these conversations about, Becca's family's loaded. This house that they live in, but and we have a nice house, plenty of, like, here in the Midwest, you can. Like, we have, I don't know, 6,000 square feet or something. And it costs it's a joke. Like, compared to what you guys would pay for a house like that, less than 500,000.
Drew is balling out in Fort Wayne.
Yeah, I don't want much. Just my 6,000 square foot house.
That's not terribly. Okay. So that was not intended to be a flex. The point I was getting at was, like, my kids will come home and say, oh, their family's super rich or their family's super rich. And the question I ask them, and of course they don't know the answer, is like, is it because they're rich or they look rich? Right? Like, if mom lost her job or dad lost his job, how many months do they have before they have to start selling that house? Right? Because if I make no money for the next 2 years, I can pay for everything. Right? I've got 2 years. And so like, I try to teach my kids, like, what is rich? What is wealthy? Well, to me, wealth is a measure of time. It's how long can you live the current lifestyle you have if nothing else came in, right? And for most of these rich kids that they see, I bet it's not more than 90 to 120 days.
Probably not, if that. It's probably already loaded up on credit cards.
Awesome.
That's super cool. Another good quote. We're going to have to pull out some good quotes here. I do have one question, and this is selfish for me, and it's going to probably take us down a rabbit hole that Mike's probably not too interested in, but like, what are you doing with your kids to do that, to like show value? And what is your goal with your kids? Is it that they don't ever work a W-2 and that they follow dad in the entrepreneurial footsteps? Like, where's that? Because there's a business goal for you, I'm sure, related to your kids.
Yeah, it's a great question, because, so I've been investing for 7 years or so, but I've been reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad and the podcast. And, my kids have been around long enough that they hate podcasts, right? Because dad always had them on in the car. Like, it's, whatever your folks made you listen to, it's like you're torturing them. So we talk a lot about money. I think as they've gotten older, I've learned that just being that example of Like you can tell them all the things, but you have to show them. Right. So, and it's the same with like how you live your life. Right. Like I haven't always been a good example with the way I eat. Right. So there's an opportunity to show my kids a better way to do that. When it comes to like faith and reading scripture, and I can tell them to go read their Bible. Right. But it's much more impactful when they know that I'm doing it. Right. So we talk a lot about money and what it is and what it isn't and what the world expects it to be. I do believe like investors have this problem or this mentality where like our light bulb has gone off and passive income and financial freedom and tax benefits and all this. And why doesn't the whole world do this? The whole world can't, and they shouldn't, right? Like we need people at McDonald's and at the bank and at the hospital. Like we need society to function. And so when I talk to my kids, we talk a lot about it's not what you want to do when you grow up, but what kind of life do you want to live? Right. Cause like we're in the throes of trying to pick colleges and what's your major going to be. And I've got one coming out of college and, you know, everyone asks these kids, well, what do you want to be when you grow up or what do you want to do? What kind of life do you want to live? Like that's the question. Right. And so then go shopping for the career that points towards the kind of life that you want to live. Now, most people want to be free and they want to have lots of money. And of course, that's exactly what teenagers want. Okay. But so you need to find something that gives you some of that freedom. Maybe it's real estate, maybe it's investing, but maybe it's being an anesthesiologist who gets 12 weeks of vacation and gets paid $900,000 a year.
Yeah. Right.
Doesn't sound terrible.
Yeah. So I've had to learn not everyone's built to be an investor or an entrepreneur. And I've had to learn how to not shove that down their throat and realize like my daughter's graduating from interior design school and she loves it and she's very good at it. And that may very well be the highest and best use of her talents. And that's how she's going to contribute to society. She can still invest on the side and I can teach her how to house hack and I can do all these things if she's interested, but it's not something you can force on them. That honestly, the more you force it, the more they'll probably push back.
To push back. I have a 5-year-old and that's definitely the case.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, well, so much good stuff, Drew. I really appreciate, giving your insight and everything. Like I said, I think you're so level-headed just in the way that you view stuff. And it's a way that I think is a much healthier view on like life and investing in business than most people have, myself included in that. So awesome. So I want to dive into our end of show questions here. We have 3 questions that we ask every guest that comes on. Don't worry, there's nothing too difficult in there. So the first question, which is always the favorite, what is the craziest real estate investing story that you have? It can be good story, big win, big loss, crazy, whatever. The only rule is it cannot be about finding a dead person in a property because we get too many of those and it's a bummer.
We get a lot of those.
Yeah, I was going to say
it's a bummer every time. I'm like, I want to hear something funny,
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish my buddies, 2 buddies that I am good friends with, they host the Real Estate Disasters podcast and it focuses on that kind of stuff. And I haven't been able to be a guest yet because I don't have a whole lot of disasters. I wish I did. I tend to be really conservative, and I'm sure my day's coming. The worst that I've had is I did buy a property at the sheriff's sale. So you're not supposed to go in the property, right? Of course, I've got keys to everything in town. So I had been in the property, right? But it's sight unseen. You get what you get. Not a big deal, right? So I bought this house. It was a great discount. Moved the tenants in, and water starts backing up. Okay, so we've got a problem. We'll just bring the sewer people out and they'll clean it out. It's not a big deal. To make a very long story short, it was a complete collapse of the sewer lines that was there. And it should have cost $6,000, $7,000, something like that. But the drain out to like the municipal sewer, like I'm responsible for everything up to the city's drains, right? Well, my sewer line was 9 feet deep, which is way deeper than what it normally is. And it went under the street to the other side of the street. So they had to dig super far down. They had to shut the road down. They had to dig under the road. Like it was just a disaster. So I think it was north of $20,000 by the time we were done. Now, fortunately, time heals all mistakes for the most part, right? Sure. So 5 years later, I was cash flow positive again. And that's been an amazing rental ever since. But be cautious with what you buy at the sheriff's sale because you can't expect it. And you just need to have bigger reserves because you never know what's going to pop up.
And I think sewers are kind of like the hidden thing that a lot of new investors don't even realize. Dan and I, we almost got bit by that actually on the very first property we went to together. And they found that the line was like 25 feet below the ground. And we were getting quotes of like 40 to 50 grand just to replace the sewer line, especially because it was on a busy street.
And it ties
into
have to
stop traffic, which had its own costs and all this sort of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, it was expensive, and it was like tied into like a clay tile pipe and like everything. And then they're like, well, if you just like clean it out every year, you'll probably be okay.
Because it was at least, well, I mean, the fact that it was clay and it wasn't the Orangeburg, so it hadn't like collapsed, and it just would get roots in it all the time. So now we just have to be super on top of maintaining it. We don't have to pay 50 grand to replace the freaking sewer pipe.
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
So that's a good one. You got a good, I guess, like landlord lesson there. All right, second question. What is a piece of advice you would give to either a new investor, like sort of looking to get started in real estate, or a small time investor looking to take their business to the next level?
Yeah, that's a good question. I get tons of new people that come to the RIA that want to get started, right? And I think there's a lot of people frustrated right now because the rates are up and it's harder to find deals and all that kind of stuff. And I try to remind folks that there's so much that you can do right now to prepare yourself. And so if you're not educating yourself, you need to be listening to the podcasts. You need to be, YouTube and the books and whatever you can. But man, networking is everything. Like, I mean, we met each other because we network, right? The number of deals that happen in my local RIA is staggering, and most of the time they never even get advertised. I know that Eric needs this kind of deal. And when I get one, like I call him and we close it. Like, it's just that easy. So, if you're not educating yourself and networking while you build your cash reserves, or while you wait for your partner to get ready, or while you learn how to raise price, like whatever it is that you feel is slowing you down, there's still a ton of work that can be done. Find a mentor or ask questions. And at some point you're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off. But it drives me nuts when people say, well, I'm going to wait for 18 months until the market comes back. That's a failed mentality.
It's a terrible idea. There's tons of stuff you can do between now and 18 months.
Insane amount of it, I think that's super valuable. That's how I got started too. When I started flipping, was I met someone at the local RIA who I actually connected with on Bigger Pockets forums beforehand. Met them at the RIA, and then they would fund the flips that we did together because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Like, I didn't have any money, and we were both like, I guess. Was it Meg Misery Loves Company? We were both just like completely ignorant to how it worked, but they had cash and I had nothing else to do. So we were like, cool, I'll like figure out how to put the shit together. You just bring the money.
Worked it out.
It was, a match made in heaven because we both just sort of threw caution to the wind and figured it out,
Yeah, you started, you took action, you networked, and you found, you started doing stuff. And, we have people that will come to our RIA, and I'm grateful for everyone that comes, but they've been there for years. And it's time to crap or get off the pot. Yeah. Like, you eventually got to just rip the handle and go.
Absolutely. So cool. Absolutely. All right. Last question. Where can people find you, follow you, and reach out to you if you'd like them to do so?
Yeah. The easiest way to find me is probably just on the social platforms, at The Flying Investor. You'll probably get pictures of my kids. You'll get real estate investing. You'll see me strap a butt fan to my back and go berserk for a while. That's
on your OnlyFans though, right? I got some context with that.
Yeah. A butt fan. That's probably the easiest way.
Perfect.
Yeah. And Drew does have some pretty sweet shots of him flying around on social. I love it. He's gotten me hooked on. I'm already a paramotor in my mind because I follow Drew on social.
Let's go.
Do that. And you can see pictures of your freaking massive son just like wrecking other kids on the football.
Yeah. How did that happen? How did he get so big? Did you guys like give him some growth hormone?
18 years ago, we had a really tall mailman. Like, that's the only thing I could figure out.
He looks just like him. It's weird.
No, it's crazy. He looks like the men in my wife's side of the family. Like, he's a dead ringer. So there's got to be something to it there. But I'm 5'9" and he's 6'3" and I don't know, 210. And he's just a wrecking ball. It's insane.
He's an athlete, man.
That's
for sure.
super cool. So awesome. We'll definitely go and follow Drew, guys. He is a great follow on social media for sure. And not only do you have like stuff like a business, you do drop a lot of great knowledge on there too. You're regularly putting out tips on 100%. Different deals and situations that I think are really, really valuable for anybody who wants to check that out. So awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for listening. Please go and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast, and share this with other people who want to know what's possible while still being like a cool, relatable dude, just like Drew. We don't always all have to be like finance bros or guys that are doing the hustly grind thing, which I mean, Drew does, but he also does it without being a giant douchebag. So you should definitely share this with anyone who also wants to be rich and not be a giant douchebag. So, and if you want to learn how to find off-market deals, just like Dan and I do, and how Drew does, he does the same business as us, go to collectingkeyspodcast.com/free. You can get our free 5-step guide to start generating off-market leads. That will get you started right away. And aside from that, guys, thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you all next week.